My 365 Podcasts with me, Pete Cohen. Hi, this is Pete Cohen, and you join me for another podcast. Now, this is a very special podcast because I have someone who I know very well in the hot seat, someone who happens to be my brother. So, who is Richard? Hi, Richard, how you doing?
Hi, good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm very, very well. So, please tell me, what is it that, what do you do?
I manage a charity.
Yeah.
A charity is called Respond, and we work with people with learning disabilities, and we provide psychotherapy.
So, you're a psychotherapist?
Yeah.
Well, listen, what I'd really like to talk to you is a little bit about behaviour. I have a lot of people on my weight loss programme, and a lot of people will be listening to this who probably want to change their behaviour or break habits or break patterns. Is it possible for people to change the way they think?
I think it's possible for people to break habits and to change some of the things that they're kind of struggling with and feel will go on forever. Yeah, definitely.
So why do you think some people struggle to break habits or change the way they think and feel? I know that's quite a big question, but you know,
how long have we got?
As long as you want. Well, no, you see, this is the thing. I think a lot of people just get stuck, and I'm curious, and I've got my own. As you know, I've got my own ideas about it. But I'm curious as to your ideas as to why is that difficult? Why is it a challenge for people to change?
I think people get stuck in kind of living in one kind of area of their lives, and I don't mean their kind of everyday lives. I mean their kind of emotional lives.
Yeah.
So they get stuck at one end of what you might call a polarity.
Yeah.
So at one end of the polarity you'll have kind of possibly feeling anxious. The other end of that polarity you might have is feeling, kind of really happy or really kind of joyous or whatever. People get used to kind of living at the kind of anxious end and forget that there is a kind of opposite, there is another part to their existence.
Yeah.
So that becomes their kind of main focus and their main experience of life is an anxious type experience.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I think what I find interesting is that no one was born that way. No one was born. They probably were quite anxious when they came out of the womb, I would imagine, but it's things that we've learned. What's happened to us in our lives that would make us feel worried or feel anxious or feel not quite good enough?
Well, I think our experience of being parented is definitely one thing that would affect that. If you've got anxious parents or slightly kind of parents who have low self-esteem, it's very likely that you're going to have low self-esteem yourself.
Yeah. As
you grow up, their kind of view on the world is often going to be a similar view to the one that you develop as you grow up.
Yeah.
So
parenting. What else?
early experiences, I really believe, are fundamental to what kind of experience you're going to have, what abilities you're going to have later on in life. I think. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you're not able to change those things, and it also doesn't mean that you'll kind of always be like that or always be a certain way. Yeah. I think there's always possibilities for change and for growth.
I think, for example, people who are overweight often see themselves as someone who's overweight. And because they see themselves that way, even when they try to change their behaviour, they go back to how they see themselves. They go back to the way they've been. And I suppose, would you say it was the same with emotion, that if someone worries a lot or is anxious a lot, they try to change, but they maybe just tend to go back to what they know?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think certainly something that I've noticed is that people have their kind of areas that they're their kind of comfort zone. They're kind of areas where they kind of feel, they may well not feel comfortable, but it's their comfort zone still. It's the area in their lives where they're most familiar with. They know that they may well, have bad feelings about certain things or have difficulties in relationships or these kinds of issues. But that's kind of what they know. So that's kind of what they're familiar with, and that those patterns tend to kind of repeat themselves, unless you have some and I think this is where psychotherapy comes in, is where you have an ability to speak to someone, it may well not be a therapist, may well be, a friend or even a member of your family.
Quite difficult.
Got to keep this topical,
Yeah.
And it absolutely can be very difficult talking to family, but sometimes you can. And I suppose the important thing is that, what you can get from talking to other people is a different perspective on how you are and how you're experienced by other people.
Yeah.
But quite often what happens is that the patterns that you have in terms of, say, meeting new people or meeting anybody or meeting, actually kind of facing any aspect of your life, quite often those are patterns that repeat themselves. So it's just trying to think of a good example. Say you're starting a new relationship or something like that. The kind of the feelings that you get, or I don't want to use too many kind of technical terms or anything like that, but if you project basically what you're used to experiencing from other people about yourself, you project them onto every new relationship. So you meet somebody new, you kind of imagine that they're going to think that you're this kind of person. So that kind of feeds into itself again and again, because you have the same experience of, well, I'm always like this in relationships, or people always think I'm like this. Yeah. And so without being able to step back and maybe talk to a professional, like I said, or maybe a good friend or something like that. In fact, good friends are not good for this, actually, because they'll often tell you exactly what you want, what they think you want to hear anyway. So,
or what's best for them.
Yeah. So that's, I suppose, where the therapy kind of comes into it. It's good to have someone who doesn't really have any kind of investment in telling you what you're like or how, what they think you might want to hear. What they're going to tell you is often something about how they experience you as a person, and that can be very different from the way that other people will tell you, or the very different way that other people will experience you in your life. Yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense. I see, for a lot of people, they feel cut off and they feel isolated and they're not able to express themselves. I find that with women, obviously having worked with probably a lot more women than with men, especially helping them lose weight and just with their own sort of personal development and coaching, that women have a real need to express themselves, and if they express themselves, they often feel better just by being able to talk about how they feel. Often men feel uncomfortable with that because men don't like it when people talk about their feelings. So a woman starts talking about her feelings, a man wants to fix the woman immediately and makes it better, and the woman often doesn't want it to be fixed, she just wants to talk about it because she feels better. Now, this is my experience, I might be right, I might be wrong, but one of the things I've noticed a lot with my weight loss program and the fantastic blog community is people who are anonymous, that they've got a pseudonym or they're comfortable with their own name, and they're saying things that they wouldn't normally say to someone. And they feel better for being able to express themselves. And also what I've seen recently is people not just expressing things when things go well, but expressing when things aren't going well. Rather than trying to hide away and say, well, I'm a bad person. No, this is what's going on for me. And I find it's almost quite cathartic for a lot of these people that they're able to express themselves and then feel better for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the anonymity thing is important for some people. I think you can see that in helplines that are running all over the place, all over the country about various types of issues. People find a lot of comfort from being able to talk to a stranger who isn't going to judge them, isn't going to have all sorts of preconceived ideas about them, who's trained. And I think, and I'll come on to your, the blog community, because I think that's got similarities. But just to kind of say, I think helplines are very important for that kind of help, that people might just need to speak to somebody that they're never going to see, that person's never really going to know them. So I think that's very important. And I think what you're doing is is amazing. It seems to be that, you know, there are so many people from all over the place who are sharing thoughts and feelings that they may well have never had an opportunity to previously.
Yeah.
Or when they have, they've had a negative experience, and it's been very difficult. And the whole area of weight loss and body image and what people think about them is so complex, and it affects people at such a kind of core kind of level.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing that people have an opportunity to access this kind of support, this kind of network of support, which, you know, obviously you have, you know, created. But I think it's fantastic that people have the opportunity to support themselves in this as well. They're not relying on you, you know, entirely to do this. They're actually able to support each other.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Do you? Because the thing I see is that you just said there about people judging themselves, is that people are very always concerned about what people think about them. So, am I right in assuming that the reason people are so concerned about what people think about them is because of how they think about themselves? If they felt good about themselves and liked and appreciated who they are, surely they wouldn't give a monkey's what anyone thought.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I think essentially as human beings we have to have contact with others to get a sense of ourselves. If we feel good about ourselves and there's no one around to kind of share it with, or for it to be reflected back to us, that's not a good state to be in, I think, because then you become essentially a kind of narcissistic, kind of egotistical kind of person.
Yeah, I think often people associate that with that. I think, and it's wrong, almost like it's wrong to be like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it is a little bit. I think we have to have relationships, and I don't, you know, I'm talking about all kinds of relationships. I'm talking about we need to have reflected back from those people that are around us, a feeling that we have some worth to us, that we're valuable in some way, and that we're good people, to put it in a basic kind of way, I suppose. And I suppose that's, if we're not getting that from the people around us, whether we feel good about ourselves or not, it's still going to affect us. Yeah. But the better we feel about ourselves, I suppose the more resilience builds up, and the better your ability to move on and maybe find people around you who
are the same.
Yeah, exactly, or feel good in a similar way.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about projection, which is just, you were saying before about patterns that people maybe go into a relationship and they project their previous relationship into the relationship they're in now. I see that a lot with weight loss. People want to lose weight and they project what happened in the past.
Yeah.
You know, dieting, the fact that it didn't work, it's always going to be difficult, and it's almost like they're putting the past in the future, and often they don't. Yeah. They don't achieve. I mean, in a way that kind of makes sense, because I see the brain as an amazing tool, but I also see it as quite primitive, quite silly, quite outdated, if you like, you know, in the fact that it does lots of things we don't want it to do. You know, we don't want to think that way in many cases. We don't want to think we're going to fail, but the brain is maybe just trying to say, hang on a second, it failed in the past, so it's important to think this way. So how does someone change that? How does someone, I mean, is there just a way of doing it where people can stop bringing the past into the future?
I mean, there are. I suppose thinking about it from a psychological point of view, you'd want to say that, and even a historical way, there's that famous saying about, you know, those who don't know the past are condemned to repeat it. Yeah. And in a way, if you don't understand the way that you have behaved in the past, if you don't know really how certain situations arise and then continue to arise throughout your life, without the ability to look back and kind of go, oh, I see where that started from, or I see that, oh, maybe that's not me, that's that somebody else that used to always say to me that
Yeah.
you're like this, you're this kind of person, you're that kind of person. So I suppose people who are don't have that kind of ability to kind of really explore why they might behave in certain ways and in certain situations are unlikely to be able to get on and kind of be able to think in a different way. I think thinking in a different way involves knowing what one's thought in the past.
Yeah.
And I think people just very often, not through any fault of themselves, any fault of their own, will blindly repeat patterns without really getting a feeling, getting an understanding of why they behave in that way.
So the patterns that we have, we've probably developed. Obviously, we've only got them from one place, which is growing up, through having parents, through going to school, through maybe religion, through values, through expectations, things that have shaped us. And what you're saying is that if you're repeating patterns, you've probably never really become aware of where those patterns come from. So that's where therapy, coaching could come in use for someone who wanted to change. But why is there so much stigma attached to that? Especially with men, I see that quite a lot. But I think people see it as a sign of weakness to say, well, you know what, I actually need some help here. Why is that, do you think?
I think this society is one in which values kind of or seems to value success and not really relying on others particularly, but being able to find one's own way and kind of succeed.
But succeed in terms of what?
Well, it's a fantasy, really.
Rich, famous.
Yeah, I think the cult of personality, if you want to call it that, or the kind of, I'm not knocking these magazines and these, the media, but essentially watching and looking at and looking up to, film stars and models and people who seem to be, at the kind of fine end of kind of bodies and beauty and looks. So kind of theoretically, I think that has a profound effect on most people.
I think what that does, it reinforces a feeling that every single one of us, definitely in the Western world and probably just in the world in general, is the feeling of not being good enough, or the feeling of not being quite right. It's probably the most common experience, I think, which people have.
Yes.
Whether it was at school and it's when they didn't do well at something, or just feeling not quite good enough.
Yeah.
And I think society kind of perpetuates that probably more than ever. It seems to be so prevalent in society that people just feel like, the way I am, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Which I find quite interesting, because it's taken me years probably to get to this point of the realisation. It sounds quite, not narcissistical, but it sounds like I've got a big ego. But you know what? I'm exceptional. There's only one of me, and there only ever will be one of me. I could try and find myself, but I'll never find myself, because there's only going to be one of me. Why do you think people struggle to accept the fact that they're amazing, they can achieve, they can be happy, they can do what they want to a certain extent? Why do you think people struggle to do that?
I think that they've had experiences where they haven't felt like that, and it hasn't been nurtured. Feeling good about oneself is not something that we're particularly good at, and not very good at kind of nurturing in others sometimes. And I'm not sure why that is exactly, but I think there is a kind of, you might want to say, a dark side where people don't like success, or they feel that people that do succeed, in whatever field it is, are somehow kind of superhuman or something like that, and that's not for them, and they're not like that. They're actually damaged in some way or something.
So what if someone came to you? Because I think that's a really good point, and I think that'll interest a lot of people. The fact of, the reason they don't feel good about themselves because they haven't had many experiences where they've maybe have felt good for no reason at all, or they were encouraged, they were given affirmation. Because I think that everyone needs affirmation. They need to be recognised, as you said, we're social beings.
Well, children, absolutely. That's what children need more than anything, is to be
recognition, recognised.
Yeah, to be understood, to be recognised, and for their feelings to be,
validated.
Yeah, and not rejected, because, I think that that's just to go back to the parenting issue. I think that is very important that parents are able to contain their the thoughts and the feelings, essentially the feelings that children have about themselves that are really painful sometimes and in a way kind of unknowable and really incredibly scary. And if parents, what they need to do is to be able to kind of contain those feelings and give them back in small kind of portions, basically, that are manageable.
It's very difficult, isn't it? I think it's challenging for parents to be able to do that.
Absolutely, especially if their experience as being parented was complex and difficult as well.
Yeah.
And I think that what I'm not saying is that there isn't hope for people that have had difficult experiences as they're growing up.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because some people have had terrible things happen to them, and yet they've gotten over it. They've used that experience, and it's made them a stronger, a better person. Yeah. I find personally what shapes people isn't what they achieve. Personally, I find what shapes people is how they bounce back or how they deal with adversity, because it's through adversity and through difficulty that I think you find the essence of a person. Yeah. If they find something inside themselves to overcome, whether it was to get out of a relationship, whether it was the fact that they were overweight or they were unwell or something, they got sacked, that they found something inside themselves that resolved to achieve more. So let's just say, if someone really wanted to change, what would you encourage them to do?
Being a therapist, I would say generally it's good to talk.
It's good to talk, yeah.
I think bottling things up. I think using alcohol, using drugs, there's no way to deal with your problems. Okay. And many people do, I think. And overeating, I think, is another part of that.
So you would encourage people to seek professional help, right?
I think some of what you're doing, I think I think all of what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you very much.
But I think that's that can be enough for people, really. You don't need to go and seek professional help all the time. It's actually sharing, some of what's troubling them, getting strength from others who've been through similar experiences and managed to come out the other side. Yeah. Or who continue to struggle but are able in some way to share some of their experiences that will help others.
So you're saying if you want to move on and be happier in your life and enjoy your life more, whether that's being slimmer, fitter or healthier, or just being happy for whatever reason, you're saying it's important to be able to talk, to be able to express yourself and how you're feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, I found that really interesting, really useful, and I'm sure it's given some people some inspiration to carry on doing what they're doing, or maybe just to speak to people to get some help. So your charity, just tell me a little bit about your charity, because maybe we can get some people to look at your website.
Yeah, sure.
You're always looking for help, aren't you? Tell us a little bit about the charity, what it does.
We work with people with learning disabilities, children, adults, older people with learning disabilities too. So work with people with autism and ADHD, developmental problems. And it's mainly psychotherapy, like I said. It's long-term, short-term, medium-term. Yeah. So we might be talking, anything from kind of 6 months to a number of years.
So you have counsellors, therapists that work with these people. Is that face-to-face? Is that on the phone?
We have trained psychotherapists who work face-to-face with people. Yeah. We did have a helpline. Unfortunately, we had to close it at the end of March because we ran out of funds. We'd love to get that back up and running again. I know this isn't a fundraising pitch.
Well, you never know. Listen, if you don't ask these things, you don't ask, you don't get.
Sure. I mean, the helpline was amazing because it similarly to what you're doing. We were working with people who were very isolated. I'm not saying all the people who are blogging are very isolated.
A lot of them are isolated, or they feel isolated.
Yeah. So we were supporting people all over the country.
So what's happened to all those people now? That was just
they are probably trying other helplines.
Right.
But don't get the kind of service that we would have provided, because it was very much counselling based, emotional support.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of those people with learning difficulties. It's really important for them to have support and guidance and someone they can talk to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if people want to find out about the charity and get involved in any way, shape or form, what should they do?
Come and have a look at the website,
which is
www.respond.org.uk.
Yeah.
And there's stuff on there about how we work. There's a bit on there, so there's a feedback bit. So if you want to, there's also a shop.
Yeah. What for? What can they get?
We've got a number of books for sale.
Yeah.
And you can also do donations through the web.
Donations through the web. So you're always looking for donations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So donate, okay? Me and my brother will be around. We'll send the boys around. Thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And if you want more free inspiration to optimize your life so you can achieve your goals in all the different areas of your life, then visit my365.me. That's mi365.me and sign up to 365 days of free coaching with me, Pete Cohen. Thanks for listening and have an awesome day.